And there it goes. We are live. We are recording. Hello, hello. It is the end of September. Welcome, everybody, to Mastering the Drop, a real view of your recovery. I so much appreciate you either listening into all of the replays or joining us here live. Please know that we are not monitoring the comments, but that Julianne and I will be going through each and every one of them afterwards and responding, but we will also be dropping in our direct contact information, as I find most people prefer to reach out via direct message or in a personal space. Anyway, you will have all that information, and if you're watching a replay, just scroll down in the comments, you will find it there. Today, we are having an amazing conversation. This is absolutely one of my most favorite times of the year, and I know I say that a lot. So there's my apologies up front and in the open there. But this final quarter for me is a space that I am very passionate about on so many different levels, layers, and for so many different purposes, because I find that a lot of people just kind of check out, right? Like, well, whatever I didn't accomplish that I wanted to accomplish this year, is just going to kind of go on the back burner, or all of those things that I've been doing, that I've been noticing have been working really well for me. I'm going to push pause, because guess what? The holidays are coming, and it's time to put my focus onto a very few small amount of days, because I have to bring that up, right? Like, we're already in like this big holiday mode and focus, and Halloween is only one day, and it's at the very end of October, and we have a long time to go before it gets here. And Thanksgiving is also just one day, and then the Christmas period, depending upon your religion and your spiritual beliefs, generally speaking, we're only looking at a few days, right? At most, 7. Anyway, we tend to allow the entire quarter to be consumed. And so Julianne and I are going to be talking about, or sharing with you, conversations that we have regularly together about staying motivated on our journey of self-growth, and how we do that, and how we keep ourselves motivated throughout our entire lifetime. Even when we feel like we've lost focus, we're able to catch that. So we're going to be talking about how we do this, and what motivates us. And of course, Julianne and I have different approaches and different things that we focus on. But if you've been following along this week, you'll notice that everything is about facing the challenges that are present in our life, so that we can truly instigate a purposeful change, and making that be focused on what we truly want to see happening in our life, or how we want to experience living, or how we just want to see things a little bit different, because it's not always about things needing to change because they're not functioning effectively. Maybe maybe it's working, but you think, gosh, this could get better, or this could be even more fulfilling for me, or right. So anyway, that was just a long-winded introduction. I want to introduce Julianne. She's an affiliate. She is an amazing, aspiring coach, and I just love everything that she brings to the table, and will be bringing to the table as we watch her grow, change, shift, morph, and step into her own coaching practice. And so I want to introduce her, because she's always inspiring me, because she's like, what, I have to stay focused in my own mission for continuous personal growth. And I don't want to reveal any pieces of her story, because it's her story. So Julianne, say hello. You're muted still.
Sorry about that. Well, hi, Tricia, and hi, everybody. I'm Julianne. It's so great to meet you all. Should I just go over a quick little bit about my background?
Yeah, I think that would be lovely.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. So part of my story is my journey in recovery. I struggled a lot as a young person with a lot of self-esteem issues, some like traumas, which translated into an addiction issue that I had around like alcohol and drugs, but I never really saw quite as an issue until I got to college, and I realized a lot of my substance abuse issues were really being triggered by traumas I wasn't dealing with, the intense anxiety that I feel, not knowing enough about my own bipolar disorder, or about the people in my family who also have bipolar disorders and what they were going through, because my family was a very closed family in that way. But then I started learning more and more about myself and seeking help through therapy and all that good stuff. But kind of continued on into devolving into worse and worse substance abuse issues despite that. Because I wasn't really treating what the root causes were effectively, which was my depression, the manic episodes I was having, the intense social and general anxiety I was having on a daily basis that was keeping me from doing things, and just trying to move forward thinking I was functional when I wasn't. So fast forward to my mid-20s where things got really bad. and I realized that it was just no way to live, like not being able to have a life that was manageable, not being able to manage my own emotions, my own thoughts, my reactions. And so I actually sought out a program, and I went to an outpatient program for about 4 months. And I learned a lot of great coping skills. I learned a lot about myself that I didn't know. I was sober during that time entirely, and really took that time to really reflect on myself. And I had a lot of great takeaways from it. And I'm in my mid 30s now. I'm 36. I don't mind telling people that. And now, you know, I have struggled. I do struggle. I don't see myself as a recovering addict anymore because I've put down my drugs of choice, and I choose not to medicate the different traumas I work through and my anxiety and those things in that way anymore. And I choose healthier options for that now. But that doesn't mean that I haven't had setbacks or that things haven't always gone well. You know, like life isn't linear. The life shows up, and I probably haven't dealt with every single thing with grace. But that being said, every time I have a setback, I realize I need to reset, I need to reevaluate, and I need to say, hey, what's not working for me anymore? What is still working that I'm not even using at this time? And how am I going to move forward from here? Because it's not really about the number of setbacks that you have. It's about how you move forward and your general attitude around it. And I really think if you change your mind, you can change anything. So it's about your mindset.
Oh my goodness. I just want to have you pause there, because how inspiring, how just truly motivating to hear that, you know, we can experience living any way that we want to. We just have to be willing to explore, search, seek, listen, hear, absorb, and the way I teach it is add, edit, delete, make it your own, and have it fit into your life, your lifestyle, versus trying to just your life to fit into some model that somebody else created or thought up, right? And I think that is truly amazing. And P.S., you look great.
I have a ring light.
if I didn't know already that you were 36, I probably would have not expected for you to be over 30. Anyway, but you know, I think that it's important for anybody listening, you know, that has been given the label, that has been given, you know, the prescriptions and, you know, all of the things, to hear that doesn't have to be a life sentence. It doesn't have to be how you identify as a human being. It doesn't define you. But also something that I really love is when we can say, you know, this is not just a me thing, right? Like I had years of conditioned ways of being because of what was modeled for me, and what was modeled for me came from someplace else as well. And genetically, we're all strung together and right. And so sometimes we have to go, okay, like it makes sense why mom was this way because grandma was that way or grandpa was that way. And so on and so forth. And if we just, we generally look at that with an unjaded lens and say, not try to place blame, right? So we talk about our traumas in early childhood or adolescence or young adulthood. We talk about them, and often there's this thing of blame, and it's like, well, sure, some things you had no control over, but in other spaces, it's like we didn't know. Like my mom didn't know not to sweep her troubles under the rug. That's their generation. That's what they did. Right? It's just in her late 70s, like way back then, and that's what you did. You only had on a good face, right? You didn't talk about it. You didn't you by no means did you take it outside of the house, right? And so where I feel like I'm at the beginning generations of being able to start speaking up about, right? And because I'm 51. So, I feel like my age group is kind of that some do and some don't. And then, then there's your generation, right? And then the one below you and the one below that. And everybody's starting to learn how to articulate their emotions and not feel so ashamed or embarrassed or like there's something wrong with them. Just that there's something that needs attention. Right. So anyway, thank you for sharing that, because I think that's, just set a really great foundation. So, because I know a lot of people that are listening, are in a recovery journey, whether it's, the very beginning, first, few days and or weeks, or, I've had a lot of conversation with people that are 8-9 years out that, got sober, in one of those real nitty gritty traditional ways, going to AA, but never really felt like their life changed. They still sit there feeling almost as if, they're just a dry addict, right? And, I still am doing the same things. I'm just not drinking or using. Where can you start with that? Getting motivated, for that self-improvement journey, but then also, maintaining that.
Yeah, I think motivation's a funny thing, right? It is hard to maintain. I think, and I don't think anyone should be particularly hard on themselves for feeling that way. And I think that's where some of the setbacks come from, is you start to feel like, oh, I feel hopeless, or I feel like, I slipped up, or this isn't working, or it's not working as fast as I want, or nothing's changed. But that's the thing, is you can change anything at any time that you want, and I think for me, the biggest thing was actually just changing my mentality from a victim mentality where I felt like everything was being done to me, everything, including like my past traumas, like stuff like that. And it doesn't mean that those things, I don't mean to take any weight away from those things, but the way I turned it around was in my mindset of saying, well, I'm an advocate for myself now. I'm not a victim. I'm an advocate for myself. I'm allowed to feel unmotivated. I'm allowed to feel like I don't know what to do. Sometimes maybe I don't know what to do, and I need to take direction from someone else, which is where programs like NA and AA can be really helpful. Is in those type of situations where you're like, hey, what? I know I need to change, but I don't really know what to do. Taking some advice from somebody that it is working for, or finding a program or something, or a coaching program, that can help you find some direction while you figure out what are those things again that motivate you? What are those things again you want to have? Who is that person that you want to be, that you're not quite being right now? And then you can take it or leave it, and that's one of my favorite things about Tricia, is she's always saying you can put things down, you can pick them back up. And I feel like that's really something like I like to live. And with motivation too, I think we tend to get really down on ourselves when things don't go quite the way we planned. So sticking to a rigid plan isn't always the best. Having a plan is good, but knowing that your plan is kind of like a living document where you can change it, you can update it, you can, add, edit, delete at any point that you want, you can do that. Life doesn't have to put you in this tight box. And that's when we feel trapped, right? Is like, when you feel like you have to fit into a certain thing. And sometimes I think recovery can make you feel that way,
Well,
but
if I can just even like pause there for a minute, because, and I think you'll agree, right? Like, so as we get, we're in recovery, and of course, one of the things that we're prompted to do is keep busy, make sure you don't have a lot of downtime, because boredom's not your friend, and just a lot of things. But we get in this structure, right, where we become, and I heard words like my little buzzwords, rigid with things. And now we have this sun up to sundown routine that if it doesn't happen exactly the way that it's planned, things don't feel right, which then puts us in a tailspin or whatever, right? Insert depression, insert annoyance, insert agitation. But, so everything has to be just so. So now we've got this like really rigid plan, but then you add in, that piece of psychology that tells you, if you get on autopilot, so you're driving down the freeway every day, you take the same route, you're carving out that same exact pathway, and you no longer are noticing the flowers or the trees alongside the road, or that new structure that goes up, right? So like in our environments, if there's never anything that changes over time, what used to be vibrant becomes mundane. It becomes muted, right? And it becomes blasé, boring, uninvigorating. It doesn't stimulate us in any way, shape, or form. So we have two different aspects here. We have those habits that we've created, healthy or not healthy. Anybody that listens to me knows that I talk all the time about how living without habits fixes everything, because habits hold you hostage. So now if you can't get to that 6 a.m. spin class and your whole day derails, that's a problem. So if we think from the addict mindset, one, if we're not stimulated in a positive way, that's not good for us. And also, if we become so attached to things, habits, routines, any negative attachment, even a positive attachment, if it becomes something that rules our life, we become dependent on it. It's part of the definitions of addiction, relying on something outside of ourselves for peace, joy, comfort, relief, value, validity, worthiness, whatever, right? Like we need to remove that from our life. So how do we stay motivated when, I think I heard you say earlier, it's about looking at those things that, they're serving me, but maybe they need an adjustment, or what's no longer serving me, what was serving me that I let go, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also think it's important just to remember too, that, like with the rigidity, right? Like that's when you start to feel like you're failing. And that's when maybe your motivation is going to dip, because you feel like, oh, I didn't accomplish these certain things, or I didn't do this exactly how I was supposed to, or I didn't reach this milestone when I was supposed to. And then that's when you get down on yourself and you start to get a little depressed and your motivation wanes. But if you realize that you can just like keep moving, you can just keep it moving and figure out, okay, like what can I do to replace that, or in place of it, or something, that's really important. And I think it's just also important to remember too, at least this helps me personally, this is just a personal thing I like to do when I'm kind of meditating and stuff, where I'm feeling extra stressed, is that you just don't really know how long any situation is going to last, and especially when it's negative, it can feel like it can last forever, or like it's this big pit and it's hopeless. But really, and what I realized when I went through the rehabilitation program that I did, because I was an opiate addict. And so I went through some very rough withdrawals, and it was very, not just mentally, but very physically taxing on me. And I didn't know how long that was going to last. And I did all this scary research that told me it could be like 2 years before I ever felt normal again. And I was like, oh my God, like, wow, like that's a really long time. But in terms of my lifespan, 2 years is not that long, actually. And also, if you think about it, which is what I like to do, is think about it as though you just put one foot in front of the other and you just keep going. And you might not know how much longer you have to do that to move through this situation, but everything passes and eventually you're going to move through it. And you can't get so attached to the outcome. You want it to be a positive outcome, but if it's not the exact specific outcome that you're imagining, that is okay. The point is that you're moving forward and you're moving through it. And that motivates me a lot. And I hope maybe that thought will help other people feel motivated when they're not, is that, yeah, it sucks right now, but it's just one foot in front of the other, and it might suck for days. Each footstep might be exhausting, but eventually you're going to get to that point at the end where you're like, wow, look at all this work I did behind me, like, look at everything I did and where I am now. And when you start to see those things happen, I feel like that keeps your motivation up too, because you're like, okay, you know what? Like, I maybe didn't see this light at the end of the tunnel, or things didn't turn out the way that I did, but wow, look how far I came already. Like,
I think that's important to put a flag next to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, in training mates, we do that night hygiene where we all, or the core non-physical feeling, where the check-ins with ourselves always are prompted to start at the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like anything and everything like that worked well, or feels good, or feels right, or right, like always acknowledging yourself first for what has happened that is positive in nature, because by the time you get to the things that didn't work so well, like it seems so much smaller. But when we have this constant focus on all the things that are wrong, we tend to attach it in such a super broad spectrum. I also like what you were talking about with regard to the pressure we put on ourselves to perform every day by creating this big long to-do list of things. And I just, all of a sudden this visual popped into my head of how I manage my calendar, right? Like it might be socked full with, back-to-back things, but I color code everything. And I've got this one color of green, right, that I utilize on my calendar that, wow, they can just be pulled over to the next day, right? Like, sure. I said I would do that on, Tuesday, but Friday looks better to me right now. And just pull it over, right? So that's the cool thing, is time is man-made. Like, why do we have all of these like pressures on ourselves to perform by a specific, just that we aspire to get there. And as long as we're moving forward, to always acknowledge ourselves for, taking that one step forward. And even if we take 2 steps back, but as long as the next one is forward, whatever, acknowledging, ourselves for 1, catching it, and 2, getting in the going, heading in the right direction. And I'm just, why do we have to say, I want to lose X amount of pounds in 3 weeks? Why does it have to be that? How about just, I want to be at a healthy weight for my body, for my personal body makeup, and then just work on it. And just when it arrives, be like, woohoo, it's here. It'll be so much more maintainable if we do that. But if we go on these, and I'm using diet because it's easier, but we need fuel. We need food. It's our fuel. But when we go on these crash diets, these fad diets that are 30 days, or the I don't know, 7-day detox, whatever it is, right? Like we mess up our system. Why not just shift that to aspire to eat as close to earth as we can every day, to spend time observing ourselves and our body, because our body tells us what it needs and what works the best for us. Why not listen, track, log over a period of time and really, cultivate like this relationship with it. And it doesn't have to be food. It can be with shopping. It could be with, all different things, right? Like everything doesn't have to be so cookie cutter. Doesn't have to be, this star's doing this diet, so I'm going to do it. And why didn't it work for me? Well, your body's completely different. Anyway, you get my drift, right? Like, keep your stuff in priority order. And if you've got 5 priorities for the day, make sure that they get done first before you move on to anything else. have a master list of other things, have aspiration plans, action plans, goal setting, and have them be movable, bendable, flexible, pliable. No rigidity. We break when we're rigid.
Very true.
That's my sermon. Right?
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you find, like, as far as, we'll just call them actionable items, right? We want to always make sure that we give actionable items to anybody listening. So, and I think what's coming to mind for me is development, social, spirituality, recreation, life planning, right? I'm thinking that, all 14 categories of the life balance wheel, right? The 8 primary and the 6 subcategories. What are some of the things that are important to you, that have been beneficial to you in getting the momentum or the juices flowing?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. I've actually found that if I don't spend a lot of time outdoors, that's when I get a little squirrely. It like really helps me, for lack of a better word, that it really helps me with like my anxiety. There's something just really grounding about being outside by myself, and not even necessarily just walking in nature, just taking a walk. Like I take a 15-20 minute walk every morning. And if I don't end up doing it, that's fine, but I try to get up early enough that I can do that. Sometimes I'll take a longer, like 45-minute walk, because I live really close to some hiking trails I can just literally walk to. So I'll go walk one of those. And just like that moment in the morning to myself, or even afternoon, it doesn't really matter when it happens, I find it's just like really important to me, and me feeling at peace. And when there's weeks on end where I'm like crazy busy and I'm not making the time to do that, that's when I find like I do feel like a higher level of stress and anxiety. And so that's one thing that really does bring me peace, and staying active as well. I don't always have time to exercise. Actually, what you were talking about weight loss really resonated with me, because right at the beginning of the pandemic, I actually lost 40 pounds in the first 6 months. And I did that by working out. But then also, I was really hard on myself, and I was like, wow, you have to do all these things. You have to change your diet. But then I decided to choose 3 things about my diet to change, which was I wasn't going to eat really simple carbs anymore. I cut out like rice, potatoes, and like bread, but I was like, I'm not going to restrict myself otherwise with food, and I'm not going to eat junk food. And then on days that I didn't have time to actually exercise, I just made sure I got out of my house and I walked for like 20 or 30 minutes. And, and I didn't put a number on the amount of weight I was going to lose. I just wanted to look a certain way when I looked in the mirror and feel a certain way when I looked at myself. And that was really achievable because I didn't put too much pressure on myself. And so the outdoors and staying active is really motivating for me. When I spend too much time being sedentary, I feel like my mind goes that way as well. And so that's just something I personally enjoy. And also, I like to every once in a while kind of like audit how I'm doing, where I'm like, okay, like, how have you been feeling lately? Like, what have you been forgetting to use your tools? Is that why you're more stressed lately? Is it because you've not been using the coping skills that you've learned over the years? Or maybe you need to like do some research on some new ones, or talk to somebody about how you're feeling. And so I like to do little self-audit sessions every once in a while. And that keeps me motivated, because it reminds me that there is still more room for growth, that I can't get stagnant, and that I do need to keep moving forward, because I just feel better when I'm doing that. So those are just a few little things that work for me.
I love every bit of that. Every bit of that, because I think, and I read a lot of times, generally it's, in a coach's blog, but, you hear people, talk about, working with a coach, or going to counseling or whatever. And it's really great. And it doesn't have to mean that there's something going not right in your life, right? Pro athletes have coaches. Some of the richest people in the world have coaches, that are, working with them, doing a lot of things. And there are a lot of different reasons to engage with somebody outside of your, right, like outside of your actual life.
Yeah.
To get a different perspective, to get a different view, to expand your consciousness, to expand, ideas, to, again, to help you grow, change, shift, morph, and not become stagnant. We could be leading the best life ever, right? Like there could be zero wrong, but we can still get to that place of feeling sedentary. We can get to that. And I think it happens a lot this time of year. Days start getting shorter. It starts getting, like the warmth of the day is very short and it's right in the middle of a work day. And then because, I don't know, here in California, we got to have, this daylight savings thing where, we got to set the clocks back so it can get dark at 4 p.m. before anybody gets off work. The super unmotivated time of the year. So, I think it happens frequently. So it's really about looking at how can I do it differently this year? It doesn't matter how it's happened every other year. This year, I don't want it to look and feel that way. So how do I want to go about that? Do I want to put pressure on myself to perform, or do I want to look for something different, right? Like, because maybe it's just really unrealistic to think that you're going to go out and walk at 6 o'clock at night when it's pitch black. I know I'm not going to walk out my front door. I live in the country. I'm not going to walk out my front door to go for a walk because it's going to be, it's dark here by 4:30, right? Coming really soon. And so that's really going to cut down on that time. So, do I want to explore something different? Do I want to block out an hour in the middle of the day and take a lunchtime walk? Do I want to, is the world ready for, or am I ready to enter that world of going, to an establishment where they turn on lights, right? Like gyms or, something like that. Are there other things that I can do to fulfill that? Or can I just change things up, maybe shorten my day on Friday and have, my exercise days be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because I'm cool with just 3 days a week of activity. And generally, I don't even really get that. It's very dispersed throughout every day. But so you get the idea though. Yeah. It's like, we can, if we engage with somebody else, we're going to get new, fresh ideas that we can add, edit, delete, change, shift, morph, make our own. But, so it's not always about, I've had a lot of people say, I've been sober for 9 years, but and I mentioned that earlier. And so generally, do they engage in services? No, but do they listen? Do they follow along? That's why, I try to keep the, content, very useful and practical, because I get it, man. I've been, my sobriety date, not the beginning of my recovery journey, but my sobriety date is almost 9 years ago. And so I'm not going to, go seek out a recovery coach, but that doesn't mean that I won't engage in, coaching groups where everybody is, supporting each other. It's a great idea. It keeps you engaged socially, developmentally, professionally, just all the things, right? And then your personal relationships benefit, especially the one with yourself. Anyway, so be in motion is what I heard you say. Reflect, right? Reflect, acknowledge yourself. So, acknowledge and reward. What else?
Ooh, what else? I think like self-reflection is a really big one for me. I think that's like one of my biggest ones, but I think also just realizing too, and that I think what was kind of hard for me in the beginning was realizing that just putting down the things like my drugs of choice and whatnot, or just not drinking wasn't enough. Cause I do drink now. I drink socially, and stuff. But I would say that the reason that I'm able to do that is that I really took that self-reflection time, and I realized that just putting those things down wasn't enough. I had to really look at the reasons why I was picking them up. And I think that's why you can go through a lot of years sober and say, hey, I'm sober. I've got an AA chip. I've been here 10 years, 20 years, whatever, and that's all very commendable and it's great. That's wonderful work. But there's a difference between the people who get to that point and who've also been doing a lot of the self-reflection and looking at like the root cause of like, why do I do that? Or why is this so comforting to me? Or why do I want to check out, at a certain
What's
point
the
of my
emotional
weekday?
attachment?
Yeah. What is the emotional attachment and mental attachment behind it? Because that's what's going to really help you. And I think also increase your motivation, because you're going to get these little like internal rewards you don't even realize you're getting when you realize you're like hitting these points where you're like, wow, like, you know what? This trauma is always going to be something that happened in my life, but now I can advocate for myself. And I know, hey, this is how I react to it. This is what it comes up for me when certain things happen. And you can work on all of that and you can keep working on it. And you can find, people who can give you advice on how to work on it. And there's a lot of good stuff out there. And I think that is like the biggest piece for me, is like advocating for myself and not just sitting there with kind of a woe is me attitude, or saying, I'll never be able to do this again, or I'll never be able to be, do this or whatever. It's just really realizing like I'm my own biggest fan. I'm my own biggest advocate. And, if I don't advocate for myself, probably nobody else is. And so I think that for me is a really, really, really big one, is like advocating for yourself and really taking on that. It's a responsibility. It is a responsibility.
I like that. It is a responsibility, because here's the thing. And I like that you brought in that transparency, because I think a lot of times people in recovery, when they're in a recovery space or in a, in an element where they're speaking to people in recovery, they feel a hesitation to say, my drug of choice is opiates, and I'm okay with having, a couple drinks socially. Like I've gotten to a space where I can learn how to do that. And I think it's really important to highlight this fact, right? A couple, because I never just say one thing. So one is, it's a self-determination, right? Like it's up to you what your life looks and feels like. And so being in a recovery lifestyle doesn't necessarily have to equate to 100% sobriety. Don't care what yes, everybody's going to have all different, there's so many different modalities and methods and all of these things. So really, it is something that you get to define for yourself, right? What does a recovery lifestyle mean to me? Notice I didn't say sober lifestyle. I said a recovery lifestyle.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
When we start this journey, it's to recover our life or to create a whole new perspective. So sure, for me, I've been on a life recovery journey for a really long time, over 25 years. Sobriety didn't come in until, almost 9 years ago. Do I think that I could, I don't know. I'm not going to pick up and drink socially. I will, however, drink non-alcoholic beverages or mocktails and things like that. It doesn't prompt me, right? I happen to like the flavor and I like the look. They're pretty. But what I want to get at is it's your choice, right? So if we learn properly, because this is something that we work deeply on, in whether that's evolve or live free, is looking at the emotional reason. Again, we were talking about relying on something outside of us to bring us peace, joy, comfort, relief, value, validity, worthiness, whatever. But if we're not relying on that, we're saying, I'm going to sit down and have a steak with my spouse. And guess what? That wine pairs with this steak really great. And I can stop at the one. And it's because it tastes yummy with the steak. And it's not because I'm looking to alter my state of mind or my emotional being. Right? Like there's no purpose to it other than I'm having a glass of wine. Then it's a whole different ball of wax. My dad shared this story some years back with me. He's like, I didn't quit drinking, but I really drink very little, if ever, anymore because I don't drink when I'm sad and I don't drink when I'm mad and I don't drink to celebrate and I don't drink to, right? And he listed all of these things out and I was like, wow, Dad, you didn't even know, like, you just like dove deep into a psychological perspective around alcohol, right? It's like a good one. And so I thought that was, really cool. So we don't have to give up everything. So when I talk to my food addicts, I can't tell them they can never eat again, right? Like,
Yeah.
seriously, like, if you're a food addict, how do you give that up? People are like, I'm totally addicted to food. I don't know what to do, right? It's about changing that relationship with it. It doesn't mean you can't ever have ice cream again
Absolutely.
or processed sugar, right? Like, if I go in the wrong direction with refined sugars, I know I can go the wrong direction, but I also, then I know I'm going to have to go through this whole weaning part because withdrawal from sugar is, I think, worse than alcohol withdrawal, but because it's terrible. And there's sugar in everything. You can't even go to McDonald's and get a hamburger without getting sugar because they put it in their meat. But anyway, so, if we think about that, changing an addiction or ceasing an addiction to something is psychological. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be removed from your life altogether. It depends upon you and what you choose, and then the relationship that you create with it going forward. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah. And, what you brought up, about what your father said about his relationship with alcohol, I feel like mine is very similar, where it took me a lot of setbacks actually to figure out what my limits were and what my boundaries were. And it started with the rehabilitation center asking me, hey, would you consider, because it was a harm reduction program there, would you consider just being sober just for a few months, just try it out. You cannot be sober again if you don't want to be. That's a choice, right? So I did. And then when I started kind of reintroducing things with alcohol, and I kind of had healed or started working on healing more of like the emotional issues I was having and different traumas, that's when I realized that my relationship with alcohol is very tricky, like full transparency, and I drink socially, but I don't drink when I'm sad. I don't drink when I'm upset. I don't drink if I have big decisions or things to do, because it triggers a lot in me still. And it goes a very dark direction. But I can drink socially and I can have a few drinks and I can hang with my friends and I can go wine tasting and I can do stuff like that. But I have to be conscious of, why am I drinking? Am I drinking because I'm drinking and I'm enjoying the company I'm with and we're having a good time? Or am I drinking because I want to ignore something or ignore a larger issue or cover it up? And that's where it gets tricky. And that's where I have to like sit with myself and say, okay, there's better ways to comfort yourself. There's better coping skills. You have a lot of tools in your toolbox to use. And alcohol is not one of them. When I am in a stress state or anxious or depressed or anything, it's not a tool for me. And it did take like a few setbacks for me to be able to establish a more positive relationship with alcohol. And I don't even remember when my sobriety date would be, but it's over 8 years ago. So this has been an 8-year journey of me figuring this out, testing waters, and stuff. And, I do know some people where they have to put everything down, and that's okay. Because maybe that's what's going to work for you, and that's okay. So I think just to remember that everyone is individual, including your recovery. It's your recovery. It's not anybody else's recovery. It's your life, that is a really important thing to remember, because you are just really doing it for yourself. And once you do it for yourself, everything else in your life is going to fall into place, like the positive relationships, the better jobs, all kinds of stuff like that, but if you're focusing too much on what everybody else wants you to do and what they think is right, you're going to get so stressed about that you're not going to actually be on your own path. And so that was really important for me, was allowing myself to mess up so I could figure out what was that path. But then when I messed up, also reaching out for help again and saying, hey, I messed up. I think, this is where my headspace was when I thought this was cool and it's not. And let's talk about it so that we can figure out how am I going to move forward through that, instead of getting, upset and down on myself about it. Just like, whoa, okay, this is something to look at. Let's look at it now. Like, how are we going to move through this and work on it, And so I think that's important because I'm very hard on myself all the time. I'm like,
Right. Well, I
I'm
think
my biggest fan and my worst critic.
exactly 100%. And I think, we're at at the opening of another really good conversation for us to have, because I am very passionate about harm reduction. I'm very passionate about everybody's recovery journey being what they need it to be. I think it's a different topic than, staying motivated for personal growth, although they do kind of blur together.
We could do a whole other episode.
Right. I absolutely. So, you and I, after the fact, will definitely put our heads together and look for in a couple of weeks, just so that we don't even let too much time go by. We'll look for a space in a couple of weeks so that we can, really talk to people about how harm reduction is truly okay. I mean, and a lot of different, avenues and ways to do that, because, I think this is a very important topic to have. It's not an all or nothing thing. And I truly believe that if we learn how to live for ourselves first without feeling guilty, selfish, punished, or restricted, and we start cultivating some of those skill sets and tactics, one, by getting to know ourselves at a deeper level, looking at, what mindset we generally operate in, learning how to not be so knee-jerk and reactive in our life, right? So that impulsivity, becoming responsive instead of reactive. And then, start learning some really good communication tactics inside and with others. And then moving into this ability to truly learn how, cultivate our own effective self-soothing tactics, distress tolerance, emotion regulation, the esteem building pieces that we need for ourselves, and then really being able to just put together this whole piece of life with maintainability as we want to experience it, right? I just walked us through the entire Evolve program. Anyway, I think that, I think we get this opportunity, so rarely in our life, right? Because usually, we're in this space where, oh my gosh, everything is out of control. And I just feel like I have to put pressure on myself to just 100% stop. And then I don't look at how I truly want it to look going forward, with that honesty and that transparency that says, yes, I get it. I need to stop right now. But how do I want it to look going forward? Again, we can't stop eating food, right? Or we can't, we may have to stop restricting and start eating. Anyway, there's a lot of different layers, textures, elements, and it's so unique for every single person, that I'd love to have you come back. So, because I don't want us to run over time. I have a calendar, you have a calendar, we have things to do. Please do not forget to go onto the Turning Leaves page, Turning Leaves Recovery 2015, anyway, and drop your comments right under the video as soon as it's ready, all of your contact information, so that people can reach out to you directly. I'm sure that there are people that are, so refreshed or so relieved that you were able to share, from an open space that, wow, somebody gets me. And then, we'll definitely look for the sequel, so that we can pick up where we left off. Awesome. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the live. So wave our goodbyes. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thanks, everyone.